I'm going to call to order this Lacey City Council meeting on April 20th, 2023. If you're able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do have a published agenda. I don't think there's any changes, so can I get a motion to approve?
Move to approve the agenda as published.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. We've approved our agenda along with our consent agenda items. And first up on our approved agenda under public recognitions and presentations is our Lacey Youth Council report. Come on up, Youth Council.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Abigail Sari, and I am a junior at North Thurston High School, here to give a report on behalf of the Lacey Youth Council. So going on this week and also progressing into next week, ASB elections for the positions of president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer have begun, and students will watch campaign videos tomorrow morning in RAM time, and the ballot will be opening next week to vote. Coming up next week, we have state testing as well as AP exams coming up in early May. 26 students from FBLA, which stands for Future Business Leaders of America, are in Spokane right now attending the Student Leader Conference. In terms of sports news, this spring season is underway, and at the track meet yesterday, countless athletes set 52 personal records in their respective events. Lastly, prom court voting for the prom dance happening in late May opened at the beginning of this week for students to vote for their prom royalty. Thank you.
Thank you. Go Rams.
Hi, Council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Rihanna Joseph. I am a senior at River Ridge High School, and I am also a full-time Running Start student. I am a National Honor Society member, and yesterday we actually had a volunteer event at which we went to the food bank and we helped package food for local families in need. River Ridge is also in the process of holding class in ASB elections. For this, there's a refocus to make sure that election results aren't solely based on popularity. So there's going to be an assembly next week to question candidates on why they want to fulfill the role. And lastly, the initial organization for our multicultural assembly in May has begun. For this assembly, students of different ethnic backgrounds perform a cultural dance to represent their cultural identity. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Nathan Miller, a senior at Pope John Paul II High School. First off, since our last report to the council, spring sports have started. Baseball and softball are in full swing. And our track teams are also competing, and we have multiple runners at the top of their classification in the state. And in addition to that, we also have, as one of them said, multiple FBLA members at the state competition. And on top of that, upcoming, we have a international day to celebrate the various ethnic backgrounds of our students, and also a talent show to celebrate the various skills that we have that might not be able to be shown in the classroom. Thank you.
Great.
Hello, how's everyone doing?
Good.
Sorry. All right. Well, I would say good evening, but sadly it is not a good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of the City Council, and residents of Lacey. We are not prepared. When I say we are not prepared, I mean North Thurston Public Schools is not prepared to keep your children, my classmates, and myself safe if there is a tragedy. A bit over a month ago, on March 14th at around 11:30 a.m., Timberline was told to go into a lockout due to an anonymous report that a student on campus had a firearm. or had a weapon. At around 11:31 a.m., Timberline was moved into a full lockdown. During the first few minutes of the lockdown, Timberline staff had the main doors open to the building to allow students to funnel into the school. Staff did this with no knowledge of where the possible threat may have been. These actions jeopardized the safety and security of over 1,200 plus students. Sadly, this is not the first time actions like these occurred during a lockout or lockdown. Just a few months earlier, during a lockout at Timberline, a Timberline administrator held the doors open for students to enter the building, again jeopardizing the safety of students already in the building. These failures have happened too many times, and it is hindering the confidence that students have in their staff, keeping them safe. The actions of Timberline staff and administration were in clear violation of North Thurston safety protocol procedures, which state during a lockout to lock doors, cover windows, turn off lights, and that no one may enter or exit the building until an all-clear signal is given. Furthermore, under section lockdown, subsection if outside, the protocol is to not open any doors or windows. Just 2 days after the lockdown on March 14th, I sat down with Timberline's principal, Paula Dean, to address the student concerns regarding safety during the lockdown. Principal Dean and I agreed that there is a need for more drills and preparedness of both staff and students. Unfortunately, Principal Dean and I did not meet eye to eye on the topic of building security and the importance of protecting the students already inside the building. Principal Dean believes that if the doors are locked, a bad guy will not be able to enter our school. Sadly, this is just not true. If we just look back at the recent shooting that took place in Nashville, Tennessee, we could see that the shooter got into the school by shooting out the windows of doors. In addition to procedural violations, there are more concerns from students. The concerns being that in some rooms, like the choir room and other rooms like performing arts classrooms, there are PA speakers that are not on. This puts students and staff in huge disadvantage and risk of danger in the event of an emergency. And finally, to the parents in our community. If you're a parent of a student that attends a North Thurston public school, I hope you hug and kiss your children before they leave for school every day. Because if Timberline is considered ready by preparedness standards, and if we continue to have these blatant procedural violations by staff, and if we have unsafe measures in place, then I'm not just concerned for Timberline students, I'm concerned for all students. I would like to take a moment, though, to thank the Lacey Police Department for their quick and swift response. I would also like to thank the majority of Timberline staff members who sprung right into action, grabbing students and directing them into classrooms. I hope that the City of Lacey and the North Thurston Public Schools can come together to revisit the current safety protocol and talk about current student concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, our next item on our agenda is public comments. We received one written public comment, and we also have one person that signed up for public comment. Craig Foster, can you please come to the podium and introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and keep your comments about 3 minutes.
My name is Craig Foster. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. I live on 15th Avenue, and I want to comment on the Resolution 1128 about the speed limit. This is something I think about every day, and I'm really glad to have this opportunity to address this issue to you folks, because the intersection at the beginning of Britton Parkway and Carpenter Road is probably one of the most dangerous intersections I've ever seen, and I have to drive there every day. And the reason is that the stop sign is set back from the intersection, and there's two hills on each side that block the vision. If anybody's driven there, they know that you have probably less than 2 seconds to make a decision whether to enter the intersection or not. And the traffic from each side is coming up the hill. And so these hills, if the dirt could be taken down and put back so it would increase the vision. And then also the grass grows up high on the left side, on the west side during the summertime, so that further makes it more difficult. And I've had several close calls there, and on a good day, you have 2 seconds, and with sunny weather and everything, if it's bad weather, and so if the dirt could be taken back, and then also the stop sign is set back, you have to really go further than the stop sign to get a good view. If you stay back at the stop sign, that makes it even more dangerous, I think. So I just really appreciate the opportunity, because this is something I think about every day. So
Thank you. Appreciate it.
really all I wanted to say. So
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. We'll take your comments, and we have several people on our transportation committee, and I know that we can talk about this a little bit further. I do agree that is a difficult intersection. Anyone that's been through there, that's a difficult intersection. So I think we've thought that as well. Is there anyone else wishing to address the council? Seeing none, we'll go on to our next agenda item, which is under a proclamation for Child Abuse Prevention Month. And like we always do, we'll get started down.
Whereas the City of Lacey recognizes our future rests in the hands of our most vulnerable and cherished assets, our children. And
whereas all children deserve to live in safe, stable, and nurturing environments which promote their healthy growth and development. And
whereas child abuse, neglect, and other trauma are recognized as serious public health problems affecting both the current and future quality of life in our community. And
whereas it is the responsibility of our community to ensure parents, caregivers, and other adults who influence the health and well-being of children have the support, knowledge, and concrete resources necessary to ensure all children thrive to make greatest potential.
And whereas child abuse prevention strategies succeed because of partnerships among agencies, schools, religious organizations, law enforcement agencies, healthcare providers, and the business community. And
whereas we, as a City of Lacey residents, continue our commitment to protecting all members of our community and call upon everyone to join together to increase public safety and prevent the further abuse and neglect of our children. Now, therefore, I, Andy Ryder, Mayor of the City of Lacey, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2023 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in the City of Lacey. And I encourage all community members to increase their participation in efforts to support families, thereby preventing child abuse and strengthening the community in which we live. Signed by myself, Mayor Andy Ryder, on this day's date, April 20th, 2023. And Madeline, you can come and accept this. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and Mayor. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
And the rest of the City Council, thank you very much for taking the time and the effort to care about our most vulnerable population. I'm sure that some of you know that just recently 2 more babies have died. One because of fentanyl papers on somebody's floor and the baby crawled through it. Family Education Support Services have done everything that they can imagine to try to help this situation and prevent it. I invite each and every one of you to please look up FES, Family Education Support Services.org, to find out everything that they do to help this community, as well as Mason County, Lewis County. Is it down at the harbor too? This is Roger. He works for Family Education Support Services. Anyway, I've served on this board for many, many years as president, 3 times. But this may be my last because I am retiring retired and going to travel. But thank you very much for supporting this.
Thank you, Madeline, and thank you all for the many, 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 many things you've done to help our community. We all recognize it, and we all really appreciate it, and you deserve your retirement for sure. Yes.
We'll see you,
Yep.
I have to say, I really love seeing these posted all over the legislative campus also during April. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. Okay, next on our agenda is resolutions. And the first resolutions is 1128, the speed limit modifications. Turn it over to Martin.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Today I'm recommending that we adopt Resolution 1128 to modify speed limits on designated streets. This kind of started when we annexed Marvin Road and Pacific and Kenwood, and we're going to do a bunch of housekeeping things. In order to address this gentleman's comments, we do have a roundabout that is almost completely designed. We are purchasing right away as we speak, so we're hoping to go out to add on that later this year.
Yep, a perfect place for a roundabout. Yeah.
So first, the Stillicum and Marvin Road annexation. Annex Marvin Road and Stillicum Road and a bunch of residential streets. Recommending sticking with the 25 miles an hour on the residential streets. Currently, Stillicum and Marvin are both 35 miles an hour, and we're recommending just keeping those the same. As far as the Lake Lois Pacific Avenue annexation, we picked up a bunch of residential streets in Pacific and Kenwood. Kenwood is currently 35 miles an hour, and we're recommending that stay the same. We are recommending our section of Pacific Avenue is 35 miles an hour, and the county section is 40 miles an hour. So we're recommending we stay with the 35 miles an hour all the way through Pacific Avenue for the city. Next is the Martin Way and Britton Parkway. Both of those are 40 miles an hour currently, and we're recommending that we just go to 35 miles an hour on that. And the last one is College Street Extension. That also is currently in design, and we're expecting that to go out to bid later this year also. So when that gets completed, that we keep College Street 35 miles an hour all the way through. And basically, if you look at the map that we put together, that pretty much sets up most of the arterials as 35 miles an hour or less throughout the city. Be happy to answer any questions.
Can I get a motion, please?
I move to adopt Resolution 1128 related to modifying speed limits on designated streets within the city of Lacey.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Go ahead.
I like this a lot. I think uniformity, having all the artilleries 35, having all the residential 20 or 25 throughout the city. I mean, in a perfect world, our border would be, free of county and other stuff that we can't control, and we'd have it all set the same. So no matter, you wouldn't have to put up speed limit signs. You'd just know what it was on these main roads and the residential. So good job.
So that is a good lead in. Maybe Councilmember Cox is going to lead into it. Go ahead.
We have the same
Yeah.
point, but we have heard from a constituent who was also encouraging that we lower speed limits to 35 because it precludes some electric vehicles on streets with higher than 35 mile an hour speed limits. So the really small micro ones.
Yeah.
And at a time when we're trying to encourage electric vehicle use, I think this makes a lot of sense.
So that was close. I mean, that I do agree with that. I know it was said in the staff report that, unfortunately, the county does have a 40 miles per hour, and so it's going to go 35, then drop to, 35, then going to go back up to 40 in the county, then drop to 35. Are we planning on trying to reach out to the county and see if we can get some uniformity? So that
I've been talking with them. They have a much more complicated methodology to lower their speed limits. but I think I told Transportation Committee this, that both the city and the county got a safety action plan grant and Safe Streets for All, and that's one thing we're going to have to address, is speed limits with that. We're just getting a little bit ahead of the curve.
Okay. So then these other ones that we're doing, because we've annexed them, and then we have to officially change over and set what our speed limit is on it, right?
Right.
That's what current. Okay. And then the last question, it does has to do with this. I just had a constituent reach out to me and asked, did the city of Lacey pass the ordinance so those electric vehicles, or those other small like ATVs and stuff that are street legal, can drive on our city limits? You've seen that the state of Washington has allowed that to happen. I don't know if that then does the city have to make a separate action for that to go through or not? Do we know?
I have no idea.
And so because you see golf carts, right, that can go, that would normally wouldn't be street, are now street legal in some places in Washington because the state legislature allows it. I don't know does the city have to make separate actions to allow that to happen?
Yes, the city would have to make separate actions and take a look at the context of where those locations are, because again, you're mixing certain types of vehicles with larger vehicles, and you got to take into consideration what the overall use of the roadway and safety components, but that would be a separate action for the city.
Well, I definitely would like for us to take a look at that. The people coming from Panorama going into Midtown, there's some other areas, and to allow that citywide, especially now that everything within the city is 35 miles per hour, which would meet that requirement. I think that's something that the Transportation Committee should definitely talk about and have a recommendation going forward. I don't know what the correct process would be for the next steps on that, but I would like this council to discuss it.
We will. That is something too. I think if our memory serves, it has come up in the past too, as a conversation.
I know I brought it up at some point too. I just didn't remember if the state law trumped what the cities, like the cities all had to follow suit, where do cities have to make a separate action?
We can schedule that for a follow-up conversation.
Yeah.
So these electric vehicles, we're talking about basically golf carts.
Well,
or is it different?
No, it's any vehicle that can be street licensed, and some of these
Street
smaller
license.
vehicles.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it would have to have seat belts. And
Well, not necessarily. There's those you see those ATVs out there that have it, like the Razors. Those would be allowed if it was seat licensed.
They're categorized as neighborhood electric vehicles in the RCW.
Interesting.
Okay. So there's different things out there. It'd be something for us to talk about. Anyway.
We'll get it on our agenda.
Yeah, go on our agenda.
So if memory serves me correctly, we coordinate with our with WASDOT and the county with the intersections, right? So they speak and work together more efficiently. I'm hoping we could get that kind of cooperation with the speed limits, perhaps. So.
Well, yeah, I think it does make sense to continue that conversation with especially with the county and along.
I can do that.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any other discussion? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, as someone who bikes now and again, lowering the speed limits on these roads makes me feel safer, and I know others that bike have expressed similar concerns where we have really quick speed limits on Martin Way in particular and Britton Parkway. It's a little bit intimidating to ride a bicycle when there's no barrier other than a painted line. So lowering it to 35, I think, is a good step in the right direction for making people on bicycles feel safer.
Yeah. And any other discussion? Then with that, there's been a motion to adopt Resolution 1120 related to modifying speed limits on designated streets within the city of Lacey. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? And that motion unanimously carries. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.
Next up is Resolution 1129 relating to Social Security coverage. Troy.
Thank you, Mayor Ryder. Good evening, City Council. For your consideration tonight is a resolution that will authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement with the state of Washington related to Social Security coverage for certain employees, those employees being PERS, which is the Public Employee Retirement System members. This will all be subject to a referendum vote of those PERS members. You might remember that the council took action back in December when we thought this was a simple administrative error. That was not the case, and we really have to go through this referendum vote in order to continue to extend Social Security benefits to those employees. So upon passage of this resolution, we will start that process to conduct the vote. It will likely happen in the early October timeframe, depending on what the result of that vote will really predict a couple different paths for us. If there is a favorable vote, we will go through the actions of entering into the agreement. We'll continue Social Security benefits as if nothing happened. In the event of a non-favorable vote, there will be a refund of about 3 years of contributions made by those employees, and those employees will be deemed not Social Security members starting January 1st, 2020. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but we would recommend adoption of this resolution so we can move forward.
Can I get a motion, please?
Move to adopt Resolution 1129 authorizing an agreement with the State of Washington relating to Social Security coverage for eligible employees subject to referendum vote.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. How many non-PERS employees does this city have?
Well, that's a great question, Mr. Mayor. Let me do some quick math. We have about 323 authorized positions in the budget. The last time we looked at the PERS number, it was 284, I believe. So we're talking about 50 or so.
So those 50 or so people, this doesn't affect them. Social Security getting taken out, not.
That's correct. It's only PERS members only. So employees that we have that are not PERS and not left, we actually will continue to extend those benefits.
Any other questions? Then it's been moved and seconded to adopt Resolution 1129 authorizing an agreement with the State of Washington relating to Social Security coverage for eligible employees subject to a referendum vote. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? And that motion unanimously carries. Thanks. So next up is standing general committees.
You have a
City manager.
Yep, I do have a couple quick report outs for the city manager report. Per policy, the city manager is supposed to report out on routine ILAs. Those are interlocal agreements that are less than $25,000 in value or no value. And on 2 weeks ago, I signed an interlocal agreement between City of Lacey, City of Olympia, City of Tumwater, and Lott. The purpose of this agreement is to respond to the sanitary sewer overflow response plan. It basically is a mutual aid response. So if there is an incident that occurs in any portion of the sewer system, the collection or conveyance system, that is an agreement that the cities can ask another entity to respond on their behalf if they have the equipment or are in closer proximity, can have a more immediate response and then be reimbursed for those efforts. So again, this has no financial value and just something responding to the sanitary sewer overflow response plan that was required by the Environmental Protection Agency. And the other item I wanted to just report out as the update on the status of the opioid case settlement. As the council may recall, the regular meeting on March 16th, the council authorized me to sign the settlement agreement for the 5 opioid cases. There was a question at that time too, is because this is an agreement that is not fully executed unless all participating cities in the state of Washington also signed the agreement. I just received word 2 days ago that all 129 cities did sign and join the agreement, so it's 100%, well, they get the 100% of the funds, and that we'll be expecting the settlements to be finalized in the next month or two. And then once that is done, then the state will start letting us know when the disbursements start to occur. Of course, this will start the regional conversation about how do we use these settlement funds in the local communities. So just want to provide an update to the council on that. And again, happy that all 129 cities signed on to the settlement.
When do you think we'll start seeing those first dollars coming in?
They indicated it being the settlement will be finalized in the next 2 months, and then in a month or two after that, they'll set up the system for disbursement to the local governments, and they'll notify us well in advance of when that will occur.
Yeah. Well, this is obviously something that I know we've talked about as a council about reaching out to the Olympia, Tumwater, and Thurston County and seeing if we can work with them. We have a 3-city meeting, obviously, on tomorrow, so I guess we can maybe start that process, talking with them on what we can do. The other thing is I think as this council knows that the Nisqually Indian tribe is starting a program for medically assisted treatment. I know the mayor, deputy mayor and I got a briefing on that along with our police chief, and it sounds like that is a really good program. And we talked about this opioid settlement dollars and needing to have more facilities like that. And so I'm hoping that we can maybe figure out a way to work with the tribe and maybe purchase some more property so they can set up more of these facilities, which is desperately needed in our community. So with that, we'll go to standing general committees, and first is the Land Use Environment Committee.
Righty. Well, the Land Use and Environment Committee had intended to meet on March 28th, but we had to cancel the meeting for lack of a quorum. The item that was on the agenda was the amended interlocal agreement with the partners to the Thurston Regional Climate Action Plan. And I'm hoping, because I understand we're going to cancel this month's meeting, that we still have time to meet the deadline for that?
We do, yes.
Okay.
There's been some more refinements to the draft agreement, so Grant Beck will be scheduling another time to brief the Land Use Committee and Council on it.
Okay, wonderful. So, short and sweet.
Great. Next up, Community Relations and Public Affairs Committee.
Thank you, Mayor.
Devin, do you want me to take this?
Yeah, I was going to say my wife was on spring break, so that made me on spring break and chaired it.
Sure.
Okay, great. The gist of our committee meeting was the Spirit of Lacey Award. We wanted to recommend Ken Balsley, which we already have, I believe. So that was the essence of our committee meeting for public affairs.
Great. Just as a quick reminder to the community, Ken Balsley's celebration of life is happening on Monday, the 24th, starting at 4 o'clock. And so at the Worthington Center at St. Martin's University. So for those who are listening, if you've had a connection with Ken, please show up to the Worthington Center. It'll be very much appreciated. I've been asked to say a few words, and so look forward to celebrating Ken's life with this community. Next up is the Utilities Committee.
I'll take that again. So for our Utilities Committee, we had a brief from Peter Brooks regarding the update on the lot pilot affordable housing program. There's a 2-year pilot program for incentivizing new affordable housing construction. Then we also had a brief on our water system leak detection by Justin Bellis, and went over quite a bit of detail over what they can do to detect leaks and how we're continually improving on our utility services.
Thank you. Now the Transportation Committee.
Transportation met on April 4th, and the one agenda item was all the speed limits in the city of Lacey, which Martin already briefed on. There's no way I can follow that, so I'm not going to try.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we're going to Boards, Commission, Committee reports. I'm up first, but Scott Hager, you want to?
I just wanted to slip my hand up during the Transportation Committee to address the question that came up earlier. The RCW that addresses neighborhood electric vehicles, RCW 46.61.725 states, absent prohibition by local authorities authorized under this section, except as prohibited elsewhere in this section, a person may operate a neighborhood electric vehicle upon a highway of the state having a speed limit of 35 miles per hour or less. So
Well, there you go.
we don't have to specifically allow.
So it's allowed by law currently. If we don't prohibit it.
Correct.
Yeah. And I sort of thought that, like, at one point, I think we had to prohibit, then I think the state law came in and did exactly that. So in this case, we don't have to do it. So thank you for that, Scott. Appreciate it. Okay. Yep, still has to be licensed for all of this stuff. I will follow up with a constituent who asked me just 2 days ago. With that, boards, commission, committee reports, I do not have a report. So Deputy Mayor.
Okay. So the Economic Development Council's last meeting was March 22nd, and I did brief on that. But just a couple of reminders from that meeting. The Economic Development Council is putting together an emeritus board. I hope I'm saying that right. Yep. And the board, while it will not have any voting rights, it will be serve as an advisory board to the executive committee. We all know how this type of board works. So selections are being made for that. There is an EDC event on May 15th at the new 1889 Steakhouse, and it's an investor event. Should be 30 to 35 people. Each board member gets 3 invites for that. But our next meeting will be next Wednesday. But one last thing, the Michael Cade, who is the executive director of the EDC, has been battling really hard to keep what's called the ADO designation. That's the Associate Development Organization designation at the Thurston County EDC. And with that designation comes a few state benefits, but primarily a really nice stipend of about $130,000. And so we went and, kind of as a board and just kind of, talked to our legislative bodies and suggested that, the Thurston County EDC be able to keep that designation for this next 2 years, because it's the county commissioners who actually get to decide who takes that designation. And they all agreed that the Thurston County EDC has done fantastic work, and they will keep that designation for this next cycle. Next, we have our Thurston Thrives meeting, which happened on the 29th. Let me check my notes. It did happen on the 29th, and it was the elected officials meeting. I was there myself. Council members Cox and Vasquez were also present, along with several others. We started out the meeting really kind of just talking about, community issues and things that were happening in the community, the fentanyl crisis. There's been deaths happening in the jail, and the distribution of settlement dollars, which we are not sure exactly how that's going to happen. We won't know for another 4 months. But substance abuse seems to be driving property crimes. And the opioid task force, basically has their hands full. Judge Ann Mamil was present, and she commented that there are, basically back-to-back calls for opioid. And they usually start about 1 in the morning and go till, the sun comes up. I'm sure the chief can double park on that. We also kind of dove into some of the charter's new direction, which is basically, the mortality rates of BIPOC individuals in the community. And one of the things that was brought out was, BIPOC moms have a higher death mortality rate for their children than non. And this is one of those areas where the committee would really like to see some improvement in the community. I did throw out a suggestion based on a report that I had read about 1.5 years ago, and that's a report suggested that when there's at least one black doctor and one black nurse in your facility on your payroll, those numbers actually go down. And that report is a little over 1.5 years old, but there was another report that I read that said that when students have at least one black teacher, their grades go up. Not just the black kids, all the kids. And so I think I suggested that, we have some hiring to do in this community, and several other communities probably have some hiring to do too, to kind of balance those things out if we can. But the Thurston Thrives Committee has taken on the task of potentially threading together the different organizations who are doing these types of works, but maybe they don't have the funding, or maybe they don't have the exposure that they would need to bring these types of works to the front. And in that conversation, I think somebody said, well, we should give that job to Malcolm. And fortunately for me, Doug Ma, the leader of the Thurston Thrives, said no, that will be the committee's work to do. So dodged a bullet there, but all in all, a great meeting. Also, Sheriff Sanders is standing up a domestic violence team within his sheriff department. I didn't give a date as to when that would be stood up, but that is one of the things that he's passionate about from what he's experienced in life. And that is my report.
It's great to hear that Sheriff Sanders is back and doing well. He gave us all a very big scare. He was hit in the line of duty and rushed up to Harborview and scared a lot of this community. But I did see him recently at the Thurston Chamber event, and he's doing well. And I gave him a big hug and said, "Hey, you scared us all, buddy." So it's good to see he's back on his feet. With that, Councilmember Cox.
All righty, I have one report this time, and this is on the meeting of the LOT, or Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, Thurston County Clean Water Alliance. We met on April 12th. And the largest action was final approval of the new wastewater resource management plan. And this is a comprehensive document with strategies to meet the needs of the utility and its members through the year 2050. So it works with population growth projections, treatment capacity needs, land, equipment needs, climate resiliency, and other factors. It builds upon the management plan that the agency developed in the late 1990s to guide it through 2020. And the strategies maximize cost efficiency and adaptability and reflect community values and input. You may recall that Matt Connelly, the executive director, did a presentation to our council at a work session a few months ago, giving us a preview of the plan. And it really is an impressive document that took a lot of work, and it's not unlike our comprehensive plan, and we know what an effort and undertaking that is. We also approved purchase of $1.1 million for equipment to upgrade a substation that powers Headworks influent pumping and the Bud Inlet reclaimed water plant. The substation is approaching the end of its useful life, and it's expected to take 140 weeks to get the equipment in, but they have the money in hand right now to purchase it, so they want to get in line, get in the supply chain, and be ready to jump as soon as the equipment arrives. And then the last two things we heard reports on were the safety and staff wellness programs at LOT. And I won't go into great detail about them, but those are really neat programs, and I could just tell from the meeting there's a lot of staff enthusiasm and excitement about that.
Great, thank you. So just to let the public know, Councilmember Greenstein has an excused absence. He couldn't make it here this evening. Next up is Councilmember Stedman.
No report. Community Action Council meets next week, Wednesday.
And Councilmember Kunkel.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one quick report from the Visitor and Convention Bureau. We met on the 18th. I'll just go over some quick highlights. Overall meetings, tours, travel, and sports venues have been down for the month of February, as well as hotel stays. But the metrics for online audience is up significantly since they've improved on those kinds of metrics. We have seen considerable improvements with online activity, requests for tourism guides, and social media chatter since last year. And our annual stakeholder meeting is scheduled for June 1st this year at the Hands-On Children's Museum. The theme for the stakeholder meeting is going to be a pop art party. And I'm still not sure what all that means, but it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun, especially the venue. So that's my report.
And, recently I was asked to attend a meeting that's going to be at the Lacey Community Center on, I think, May 2nd for the Visitor Convention Bureau. Can you explain what that's about?
So it's going to be what they call a listening session, part of our DMO in the background trying to develop that. And we're still looking for feedback from stakeholders and community partners on how that's going to function within our community. So the jury is still out on a lot of things with the DMO, and that's what that's for.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will be there on May 2nd, so at the Lacey Community Center. Last up is Councilmember Vasquez.
I have a couple of reports, maybe quick. I'll try. First up, Thurston Regional Planning Council met at the beginning of April. One of the top agenda items we talked about was the regional transportation plan for Thurston County. And on the list for that, we had a couple of recommended changes, both from staff and from the city of Olympia in one case. There was a proposal to remove the Log Cabin Road connection by the city of Olympia, but Thurston Regional Planning Council staff, as well as the city of Lacey, have recommended that we maintain that project because it's one piece of a series of projects, some of which have already been completed. So in the end, it was maintained, and actually it was a unanimous vote to support maintaining that in the plan, but we also added a Southeast Olympia street connectivity study. That was the recommendation of the city of Olympia, so that they could do a study to figure out if there's a different way of enhancing the connectivity of that area without the Log Cabin Road connection, which is, that's what they were hoping for. So we're going to recommend both doing that study, but keeping the Log Cabin Road connection project in the plan. There's also, we added the Northeast Lacey Operation Terminal Facility, which was an intercity transit recommendation. Added alternative fuel infrastructure project to the plan, so we can study what alternative fuel infrastructure needs to look like in the future for our community. We are shifting to update to a 5-year planning cycle for the regional transportation plan and just adding transportation safety performance measures. So we also talked about how the federal government sets transportation performance measures. There was a good conversation about that. And the TRPC is recommending that we convene the Urban Growth Management Committee. Y'all got an email about that, I believe. And so that group is going to need to meet. And that's what happened at TRPC. We also are reviewing the performance measures for the executive director for the Thurston Regional Planning Council, which is an annual process that they go through. For ORCA, same thing. We actually are in the process of reviewing performance measures, and performances, like the annual performance for the executive director for ORCA. He's been there a little over a year now and been doing pretty well. We also heard a market study briefing on staff compensation. So they hired a compensation analyst firm to do a market study on how ORCA's salaries compare with the rest of similarly situated organizations. And so there's going to be some recommendations that the ORCA board will likely take action on next month for staff salaries to keep people who work for ORCA paid competitively against their peers in the market. It's also Air Quality Week, May 1st through 5th. So you'll be seeing, if you're social media active, you'll be seeing some posts from ORCA on air quality information, how to reduce the impact of wildfires on the health of the community and other things like that. Keep a weather eye. Intercity Transit met this week. We put a bit more money to the Martin Way Park and Ride project. May 17th, we're going to have... May 17th, this coming May 17th, we're going to have a public hearing for the Intercity Transit Transportation Improvement Projects plan for the next 3 years, 2024 through 27. And I think I said this at previous meetings, but Intercity Transit is still hiring coach operators. So if you know anybody who wants to drive a bus, send them over. You get a full paid training. if you get one of those jobs. There's also the Earth Day Market Ride that's coming up on Saturday. So I've participated in that the last few years. It's Intercity Transit sponsors everyone to gather in different neighborhoods around the county and bike down to the market. So it's a fun event, and I invite everybody to check the website for times and gather with your fellow bike riders and head down to the market. Board of Health met also. Sorry, I have 4 reports. We got an update at the Board of Health on the drug take-back program that is sponsored by a number of different organizations within this community. In case folks at home you didn't know, you can actually turn in your unused prescription drugs, and we have a number of different sites throughout the community where they will accept those, just so that folks who may not need those drugs, people in your household that shouldn't have access to those things don't have access to them, and they're accounted for and disposed of appropriately. We also got an update from the executive director of the Board of Health on what's going on in the legislature. There's a bill moving that could influence hospital nurse staffing ratios and also change the way that we assign overtime for nurses in our hospitals. So stay tuned to see if that passes or not. It could affect some of the facilities in Thurston County. We also had a presentation on the Nisqually Reach Septic Operation Program. It's not a thing that I knew existed until I stepped onto the Board of Health. But it's an excellent program where the county works with homeowners in the Nisqually Reach area to test the water coming out of their septic systems to make sure that we're not ejecting pollutants into the sound. And it also makes sure that our shellfish continue to be healthy, and that we can do shellfish farming in that area. So it's a very successful program, and they're going to keep that going. Finally, I wanted to add on to what Deputy Mayor mentioned, some sobering statistics when we had that Thurston Thrives meeting related to maternal mortality in Washington State. There was a Department of Health study that came out that said that 80% of maternal mortality in Washington State is preventable. 80%. So, and the numbers are worse when you filter by demographic, right? So women of color have worse outcomes than white people. We can do better. And so I'm glad that Thurston Thrives is working on this and trying to identify those different organizations that have a role to play, maybe bringing together a list so that we can get a good handle on what we can do as a community to improve those statistics. Those are all my reports. Great.
A couple of follow-ups with that. You mentioned the Growth Management Policy Board is being reconvened. And it's been a while since the Growth Management Policy Board was convened here in Thurston County, and it's convened whenever there's can be looked at changing growth management policy, boards borders, and I know the county is looking at changing some of those, and that's why this is being convened. Also, here in the city of Lacey, this council is, I think, aware that not all of Great Cuyo Park is within our growth management boundary. And so it's several hundred acres, actually, that's not, right? And so it would make a lot of sense at the same time that we asked for those boundaries to be changed just within the park, so everything's continuous within Great Cuyo Park, because right now, especially once the park gets open, it doesn't make a lot of sense where if something happens, we have to call Thurston County Sheriff to manage your rules within your park. That just never works out very well. So there's that. The question is who usually gets who represents the city on those boards, and how in practice what it's always been is whoever the TRPC representative has by practice been the representative, and whoever the alternate has been the alternate. And so in this case, that would be Robin and Deputy Mayor. And so just double checking with you guys that that's okay, because it's at another committee. The first time they'll meet probably is June or so, but is that?
If you don't mind, Robin's pretty stacked, and her. Oh, sorry. I think Robin's committees are pretty stacked, and I wouldn't mind taking that one if it's.
Swap, so that even though I'm the TRPC representative and the alternate, you want to be the representative to the UG?
Well, I don't think it's fair that you get
That's
get another heavy assignment because 2 of my assignments are actually kind of light.
Yeah, well, that's the reason why I asked, because I know you have a heavy assignment too, and I felt kind of bad just throwing it on you without.
There's no set rule.
There's no set rule. That's why I wanted to ask. Okay, then at our next council meeting, I will make that formal recommendation at our next council meeting, and then we'll let TRPC know that Malcolm will be the primary and you'll be the backup.
Take action now, maybe? It's a light, I mean, it's not even be 8 o'clock.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve Malcolm Miller to be the primary on our Growth Management Policy Board and Robin Vasquez to be the alternate?
So moved.
Second.
And moving second, is there any discussion? And all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion unanimously carries. So that was number one. number two is
Usually you have to be absent to be volunteer for something.
Exactly. You talked about the prescription drug drop-offs. I'm pretty sure we have a drop-off here over at Lacey City Hall. And so for the public who, if you have extra, especially if they're not narcotics or anything like that sitting around in your medicine cabinets, please bring them by and drop them off City Hall, and we'll dispose of them properly.
Hey, Chief, maybe you can clarify this, but I heard you could also put them in needle drop boxes as well, even though it's not recommended. It's at least a safe drop off.
It's not the best. We prefer if you drop it off at the designated centers. You could use needle drop off if you had to, but that's really not its purpose. We have a container in the atrium of police department, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Come on by, we'll take your stuff.
Great.
Just avoid dumping them in the toilet or
exactly.
Like that, right?
A lot, but not like that.
And my last thing I just want to talk about is ever since I've become mayor, at the end of my regularly scheduled council meeting, for a long time I've always said keep it classy, Lacey. Right? I think this council knows that I've done that. I say that not just because it's a cute thing to say at the end of a meeting. I say it because I mean it. As a reminder for this community and for this council in particular, to keep it classy when we deal with each other. Over this past week across the United States, I think we've seen just a tragic violence that's been going on in communities. Tragedy of people knocking on the wrong door or pulling into the wrong driveway or accidentally getting into the wrong vehicle. And we've seen these tragic acts of violence happen. That is just unacceptable in a civil society. And it starts, I believe, with us as elected officials, of how we treat each other, how we talk to each other, especially when we disagree with each other, right? How we are perceived when someone is disagreeing with you, that person's not the enemy. They just have a difference of opinion. And they probably have reasons for their difference of opinion. But, this is why one of the reasons why I've so been passionate about the City of Lacey starting their Commission on Equity is because we have to do a better job of learning from people who maybe don't look like us or have a different religion or a different background. It's so easy to call those people the others and assign some sort of scariness to them, to the point where if you knock on the wrong door, you get shot in this country, right? That is not keeping it classy. And it's why at the end of every meeting, and now I think I will do at the end of every work session meeting, is I'll continue to say, you keep it classy, Lacey. And I'll call this meeting adjourned.
you.